So,
Yes, sir. Please do.
based on statistics, 85% of youths in prison come from fatherless homes. 71% of high school
Yes, sir.
dropouts come from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. Nearly 25 million children live without their biological father, and 60% of youth suicides comes from fatherless homes. So we have an epidemic in this country, probably all over the world, but especially here.
This is the Power Moves for Business Growth podcast, presented by Gulfside Business Solutions, where stories and strategies meet to fuel your growth. At GBS, we bring together expertise in financing, strategy, marketing, tax, legal, and business operations, all to help you make the power moves that drive lasting success. Join us as we explore real-world insights and powerful moves from leaders, partners, and innovators shaping business growth today.
Welcome to the Power Moves for Business podcast, brought to you by Gulfside Business Solutions. My name is Joe Austin. I'm the owner of CJA Business Strategy. My co-host is Herb Johnson. He is the Chief Strategy Officer at Gulfside Business Solutions. How are you doing today, Herb?
Well, I'm doing great. I'm excited about today.
We interview business leaders and entrepreneurs to find out what power moves they've made to grow their careers. It's our goal to help you discover at least one power move that you can make next to grow your business as well. Today, we're going to meet businessman and family man, Alan Miller. Herb first described Alan to me as, this is a quote, an exceptionally smart businessman. High praise. In this episode of Power Moves, we'll talk about the power moves of Alan Miller, who from humble beginnings took a small cable installation company and grew it into a marketable asset that was snatched up by a larger conglomerate. A man with a great heart. We also talk about Alan's unique upbringing and family and how his faith played a role in both family and business. If you're fighting the battle of work-life balance, this episode is for you. If you have the goal of growing your business to eventually sell, this episode is also for you. Come laugh with us, learn from Alan's extensive experience, and walk away with your next power move. Alan, welcome to Power Moves.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Appreciate the kind words.
We really appreciate you being here. And we talked a little bit about the power moves that you've made and so forth. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about your family initially and your upbringing, and then we'll go from there if that's okay.
Yeah, sounds great. So I'm very blessed this last November to celebrate my 28th wedding anniversary with my wife, Deanna. We had 5 children total. So our oldest daughter, Abby, and she's married to her husband, Easton, and they have our first granddaughter, Madeline, which we're very pleased to have in the world. She's a blessing. Our next child is our son, Bryce, and Bryce got married this past year to his wife, Kim. Then we have our daughter, Grace, and Grace works at Ashland University, and she ministers the women's teams with FCA. Then we have our daughter, Nuhami, and she's a senior at Kent State. And then we have our youngest son, Bodpin, which is currently right now a freshman at Ohio State University.
Great. Tell me a little bit about your upbringing as a child.
So I'll try not to get emotional on this. It's funny. I've told this story several times, and sometimes it goes different ways. But my father passed away when I was 5 years old, and my mother was 33, no high school education, no job. My oldest sister was 14, other sister was 9, and so there's going to be struggles. So growing up, I lived in 50 different houses, went to 6 different schools, and life was challenging. And unfortunately, my oldest sister passed away, and we'll get into this a little later. Kind of led into me starting my company, because it was kind of not out of trying to start a company; it was really just out of desperation to make more money for my family. And then my other sister, unfortunately, passed away. Just a lot of struggles, as you can imagine. And then
wow.
My mother passed away after that. So it's a whole different story. So anyway, not the greatest beginnings, but we have a God that put men in my life, people in my life that still mentor me today, and it's just it's a God sent story. I look back now as older, looking back, and times in my life I wouldn't be where I'm at today without a track coach, baseball coach, friends, just different people. It's been amazing to look back and see how God's used different people in my life to get me to where I am today.
Yeah. There's some of that I didn't know. I mean, we've known each other for about 15 years and just kept in contact. We met on a motocross track.
Yeah.
and I was at Alan's generosity. My son's bike had broke, and I was looking for parts and knocking on everybody's door, and he didn't have the part, but he offered me a motorcycle, and I declined initially, and I walked around, and then I watched my then 11-year-old son cry because the bike was broke, and that was the area qualifier, and we were done. And so I went back and I knocked on Alan's door again. And I said, is that offer still good? And he said, take any one of those 5 you want. And now I'm going to cry because, yeah. And that was one of the kindest things, that anybody had ever done, because it impacted not only me, but my kid as well. And I've been forever grateful for that.
No, I appreciate it. To me, it's about helping people. And, as you know, the motocross world is, and, my son no longer does that, but it was very competitive and cutthroat at times, but
very,
and it was easy to turn into a person you didn't want to be as a father and as a competitor. But at the end of the day, it's about helping people. And, we may have lost the race that day, but we won the bigger race in life. That's the way I look at it. And
that's the way I look at it too, my friend.
That's another God sent story. God put you in my life that day and hopefully put me in your life. So it worked out.
Yes, sir.
Before we move on from family, I want to ask you more about fostering. Anyone that watched the Power Moves episode that my wife, Marissa Austin, was on, you'll know how close to our heart foster children are. Thank you for blessing those kids. But I want to ask you if you're willing to share, how did that come about? How did that come on your heart and your wife's heart? And how did you grow your family that way?
Yeah. So, one thing, not having a father, I really value being a father. And, of course, I've made a lot of mistakes, as we all do, but hopefully all my children will tell you that I do my best. I love them. I care about them. So as I discussed earlier, my oldest sister passed away, and she had 2 daughters. And at that time, my wife and I were really struggling just to make ends meet week to week, living week to week. And nobody was going to take the girls. So we decided to take the girls from North Carolina, brought them back to Ohio. And, my wife then got pregnant with her 3rd daughter, Grace. So then we were going to have 5 kids, and we could barely afford to feed ourselves. And so I decided to get a vasectomy. So no more kids. And then, fast forward, I started the company. My wife went to nursing school, and of course life got better. And, my daughter, Grace, I was taking her to like a summer rec thing. And, before you had to do like the death grip on the hand and do the handoff inside the school. So like her 6th grade, in between her 5th and 6th grade year, I believe, I was walking her into the school, or I was going to walk her into school, going to park. So what are you doing? I said, well, I was going to park and walk in. She said, no, Dad, you don't need to do that. And I'm like, hit me, man, it's over. She's turning the page. So anyway, come home and told my wife I wanted more children. And, and that we thought about it, prayed about it. And it was like a 2-year approach or prayer that we kind of decided to move forward with it. We started with a mutual friend of ours that had adopted before, went through their agency, and we tried our attempt was to adopt in the United States, a lot of red tape. God had other plans, and they had 3 countries they were working with at that time. It was China, Ukraine, and Ethiopia. And, of course, we didn't care whether the kid race, color, anything like that. We just wanted a child. And a year later, we get like a little mug shot. It's all we had. And we said, yes, it's just like having a baby. When you have a baby, you're going to, whatever you get, you get. And we just decided that was our approach. And then that went really well. He was here about 2 years, decided wanted another child. And then, so Jaime's adoption was a little bit different because because of her age, she was on a special needs site. And nothing was wrong with her, just her age. She was going to age out. And we just decided to pick her and went and got her. And, I don't think got her, that doesn't sound right, but we went to Ethiopia and picked her up, brought her back. And it's, those kids have blessed us way more than we've ever blessed them. And, like I told you earlier, coaching, whether it's youth sports, middle school, or at the high school level last 2 years, I always latch on to a couple of the boys because I can always tell who doesn't have a father in their life. And I don't care about their athletic ability. I just try to mentor to those boys. And, there is a couple things I don't know at what point I wanted to share about fatherless homes. And I don't know if this would be a good time to do it or not, but something I'd like to hit on.
Go
yes,
ahead.
sir.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, sir. Please do.
based on statistics, 85% of youths in prison come from fatherless homes. 71% of high school
Yes, sir.
dropouts come from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. Nearly 25 million children live without their biological father, and 60% of youth suicides comes from fatherless homes. So we have an epidemic in this country, probably all over the world, but especially here. So I think as men, we need to step up. We need to do more. I can tell you,
Yes, sir.
unfortunately, I'm 54 years old. It's going quick, but I still struggle with not having a father growing up. I mean, of course, I've overcome a lot of that, but there are struggles that I've had to go through, and thank God God blessed me with my wife, and she's had to put up with a lot and help me get through a lot of that over the years.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
those numbers are staggering. Unfortunately, I know them because at 5, my father left, and that creates some challenges when you're young. And again, a single mom, and there wasn't 5 of us. There was only me and her, but she worked really hard
Yeah,
to just keep a roof over her head, and so we share that. I think I didn't know all that, and
yeah, yeah. I mean, look,
again,
my mother did a lot for us. She struggled, of
yeah,
course. There was a lot of issues. She grew up with a lot of issues in her life, and yeah, it's like I said. I mean,
yeah,
based on all those statistics, I lived all that, all the different places. Based on statistics, I shouldn't be where I'm at today, and I thank God for that.
yeah. God is good,
Yes.
Yes,
definitely.
sir.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. Another thing you mentioned when you and I were trading emails to plan the show, you wanted to talk about, and I want you to talk about this, the perception out there that you have to be college educated to be successful, like it's mandatory. I agree with you that college is not mandatory for success. From your perspective, tell us more about your path, and it didn't include college, and so just show us how this is possible for others.
No, it didn't. So, I do think that, look, I do value an education. All my children will have college degrees. It's something I value, and it's easier if you have that piece of paper. It doesn't necessarily have, I think that, and I say that piece of paper meaning a diploma. If you have a diploma, no matter what, and it kind of opens doors for you. But I also think
Right.
that, when you grow up with nothing, you appreciate everything. And, by not having a
Yes,
degree,
sir.
I had to outwork people. And when I sold the company, I had a business partner. He wrote me a note, and he said, he said, you won a race that you started way behind, but you passed everybody and won the race. And that I still got it. And I'm actually going to frame it. I just haven't done it yet because it just reminds you where you come from. But I think if you learn a good trade, I think we see that college is great, but there are also a lot of trades that people aren't doing now that you can be very successful. I had to
Thank
learn the
you.
hard way. I laugh about Excel, and I laugh about QuickBooks. When I finally hired my first accountant, to come work at the shop, I did something on QuickBooks. He said, "How did you do that?" And I went, and he said, "I didn't even know you could do it that way, but I taught myself how to do it." So he taught me a different way, a faster way to do it, but I didn't know. It's funny. I just think, but a
Yeah.
degree is important. I'm not saying it's not, but I think if you're willing to outwork somebody and educate yourself, self-educate yourself, you can do that and you can overcome. It's not going to be easy, but it is possible to do that.
Yes, sir.
And it's hard for AI to replace the skilled trades. It just is.
It is.
So yeah, I think skilled trades right now are amazing to go into. Huge business opportunities, wonderful lives to be had. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. Growing your business doesn't stop when this episode does. That's why Gulfside Business Solutions and CJ Business Strategy offer webinars to help you grow your leads, sales, revenue, and profits. This isn't a lecture. This is an interactive session where we're going to help you grow your business. To learn more and to register, go to gulfsidebusinesssolutions.com/webinars. Now, back to Power Moves.
It is. Um, Tell me a little bit about your company. You mentioned it started in the show before we started recording. You mentioned that um, you decided to have employees versus 1099 contract work. Tell
Yeah.
us a little
So
bit about that decision.
yeah, well, I'll kind of go back to this beginning real quick, if you don't mind. Just when I started,
Yeah, absolutely.
when I started the company, I wasn't looking to really start a company. I knew I needed to make more money, so I was in a little time. It was Time Warner at that point, and I was at a local office, and the guy was telling me some changes we need to make, and I told him I was looking for a job. He wanted to hire me. And I said, what can you pay me? He said, $11 an hour. I said, I appreciate it, but I can't work for $11 an hour. I got 5 kids I got to take care of now. And he asked what he could do. And I jokingly said, let me have my own contract. And he said, well, I can't do it. Let me talk to my boss. So fast forward 6 months later, I had a contract, prime contract, which were very difficult to get. I had about $800 cash, and I made a $200 deposit. And so that's how it started. And then I had to take a second mortgage on my house. And I remember standing in the bank shaking, writing that $20,000 check out to myself, because I knew if this didn't work, I was going to lose everything. And then, fast forward probably about 60 days into the process, I started getting paid from the work I was doing, run a route during the day, come home, do the paperwork at night. And then they called and said, hey, can you add another truck? And that's when the light bulb went off. So I went out and bought another used van and added that truck. And then at the point when I sold, we were in 14 states. And, between employees and, contract labor companies, we would sub out to do summer work. We were about 450 associates. But what you were talking about earlier is, in the beginning, a lot of my competitors, they were a lot larger than I was, but what they were doing, they were just hiring, pretty much anybody, put them in any vehicle. And what we kind of did in the beginning is we would represent the local cable company. If you ordered cable service, disconnect, whatever you wanted to do, we would come and represent the cable company. Well, you never knew what kind of vehicle was going to pull into your driveway. So I recognized that, and we went all employee-based, uniform truck, uniform employee. So whenever an AM Communications truck pulled up, it was a uniform truck with our logo. Our employees, walked up, they had a uniform to wear, and that kind of separated us. And by doing that, I was able to land the contract in the Cleveland area, Cleveland, Ohio. And then after that, it kind of, we were able to grow at a pace that changed the whole dynamic of the company.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a phenomenal story, Alan. It truly is. And that part I did know. And, recognizing that, and, to the people that are in business, by making everything uniform, it created trust almost immediately. And you're going in people's houses, and I'm sure the companies that you work for recognize that and recognize the commitment. Yeah.
There was an annual golf outing that we had to do every year. And sometimes I wasn't very happy because, they of course expected us to sponsor. And, at that time we were smaller, so it was a little bit more difficult for us to sponsor these events. But then the president and vice president at the time asked if they could golf with me and one of my associates. And I knew, okay, that's a good thing. And that's when they told me during the golf outing that we were going to get the contract in Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, we always had competitors. We didn't have an exclusive contract, but we were able to get the majority of the work.
So what's an example or two of some hard lessons? I mean, I can just envision you standing there writing that check to yourself, right? You started this totally from scratch. What are a couple of things you learned along the way that you think our audience could benefit from hearing about?
I think you got to surround yourself with good people. Like, there's things I'm not good at. Like, I'm not an accountant. I wasn't good at accounting. As the company grew, I wasn't good at human resources. And you don't necessarily have to hire somebody to do that, but you can, contract that out to a local firm or something that helps you. And I think really just being super organized. We were very fortunate that I was able to build a good team, and we were actually able to build, because people would try to sell us like platforms to like organize all this stuff, and they wanted this monthly rate that was ridiculous, and you had to buy into it. And so we spent quite a bit of money, but we created our own. They still use it today to the people that bought my company. And I was able to get reports that showed me everywhere we were at by region, by vehicle, and we could break all that data down. So I think having your data, just being super organized, and really I think is just surrounding yourself with people that, they know more than you. You just got to be willing to admit they know more than you, and you just kind of use it as a team to build.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm guessing, given that you started it with your own money and $800, I'm guessing you really focused on the metrics that mattered versus maybe, the software and things like that people were trying to sell you.
Yeah, in the beginning, I mean, look, I just, I didn't know what I didn't know. I just knew I was making money. I mean, honestly, the metrics didn't really get into it till we got up to a certain size. And some months we were profitable, some we were not as profitable. And then I started, really being able to dial in on, okay, how much fuel are we burning? Just kind of, I don't know, common sense, or I guess kind of kicked in.
Common sense.
Unfortunately, my grandfather always told me there's some things they don't teach between the covers of a book, and that's one of them.
What do you think is, if you could give us a couple power moves, and I use that term only because it's the name of the podcast, but things that you did along the way. You talked about mentorship. Um,
Yeah, so I think, like I said, distinguishing my company a little bit different and being super organized, I think that really changed the dynamics of the company. And then I think, when you're an owner of a company or a CEO or president, I mean, it's lonely at the top, and I think you have to have people that you can mentor, that can mentor you, and you can use as a soundboard. I was very blessed to have he was the elder of my church, but he also he was a president of an international company and very successful. And it was funny, the first time I met this individual, we were going to Cambodia on a mission trip. I didn't know him. He was, I'm the outspoken guy, laughing, making
that's
jokes.
a
This
great
guy's
story.
he's
Yeah.
sitting in the back being super quiet, not saying anything. And that's been in 2012, and we're still we meet once a month. We're still good friends. I still use him as a sounding board. Another
Yeah.
individual, which ended up being a partner of mine into my business. I wasn't looking for a partner. This was in 2011, and he'd ran a company that was, 1,000 employees, way bigger than mine. Completely, similar backgrounds in a degree, the way we grew up, but not exactly the same. But he just ended up being a great mentor of mine. He's still a great friend of mine. I talk to him probably once or twice a week, and if there's anything in my life going on, it's one of the first calls I make. So I think it's important to surround yourself with people that you can trust, that you can confide into, and it's, to me, that was maybe is doesn't sound glamorous as a power move, but it's a great power move for you, mentally, and prepare you to grow your company. And just, it's just great to have a sounding board. I mean, 'cause, and it doesn't have to be with people in your industry. It can be with people from all over, all different backgrounds. I like to talk to people, especially business owners. Actually, I love to golf. I'm not that good at it, but I joined a country club really just where I could start mentoring, or not mentoring, but networking, to see what my next move may be. So maybe that'll be another
Yeah.
episode. Maybe it'll be another power move. Who knows?
I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
the next chapter for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Are there any moves that you wish that you would have made earlier that maybe maybe a lack of confidence or lack of faith, and you wish that you would have made a move sooner than you did? Not necessarily knowledge wise, but something that you knew to do, but you just kind of hesitated on.
Yeah, I think when you start a company like I did, it was just me, more or less. Like I said, I was doing the work during the day, doing it at night, and then even when I started a growth company, I was still doing the working day and night. I mean, I appreciate my wife, but putting up with that over the years. But one of the things I wish that I would have done earlier is let go of certain tasks, because it's,
Okay.
when you're in the trenches, it's hard to run your business. So you need to get above where you can look down at your business and look down in the trenches where you can maneuver, make moves. And once I finally learned to do that, that's when my business really took off. I think it's hard because, it's trust issues. Can you trust a person? And I finally come to the conclusion, if they can do something 90% or 85% of the way I would do it, that's close enough, and we can work through the rest of that.
Close enough. That's right. Absolutely. Great.
There are more power moves to be made, and we're going to help you. Right now, Gulfside Business Solutions is offering all of their business strategy books free of charge. This includes the Power Moves book, 2 business strategy books from me at CJA Business Strategy, and a marketing strategy book from our friends at Tylerica Marketing Systems. This offer might not last, so get your free resources now. Go to gulfsidebusinesssolutions.com/resources. Now, back to the show. Ellen, I want to ask you about the sales process from when you sold the company. I know you can't get into names or specifics. That's not important.
Yeah.
What I want to ask you about is if you can walk us through the negotiation and the sales process, because a lot of business owners have the goal of building their business to sell it, but not many of them know what to expect. Can you give them a little bit of a glimpse into what it looks like to sell a business?
Yeah. So, I don't want to get too much into it, but before COVID hit, we had kind of explored selling a business, and the way that worked is we actually found a broker that kind of specializes in that, and we were going down that path. And then once COVID hit, that kind of changed things. And honestly, looking back, it was a blessing in disguise. We didn't realize at the point. But what I will say about selling your business is it's a very stressful time. You're working two jobs because you're still running your business, and then you're also having to go compile this data that the potential buyer would
Right.
want, and that's a very stressful time. And then it's also stressful because at some point you got to get your key personnel employees involved, and those are sometimes can be tough conversations to have. But one thing I was very proud of, kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, being we were super organized, so I was able to pull the data rather quickly. They had a portal that we would enter this data into, and they had 26 people on their side, and I was the only one on my side entering it. So that can tell you how busy I was doing that. So it is a very stressful time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'll say too is, it's and I kind of made a note about this, is you can't use the attorney down the street to do this kind of stuff. You need to find an attorney that specializes in this stuff, because you may spend a little bit more money, but it can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, if you get an attorney gets you in a deal and something's wrong. And you
Mm-hmm.
also need to be careful, because there's a lot of people who will cold call you, say, "Hey, we're interested in buying your company." And a lot of times, nothing against PE firms. I know guys that work in those PE firms, but it's a cutthroat business, and if you don't know what you're doing, you can get yourself in trouble. And they dangle a carrot out there, and you take a little up front, and then you never see the rest of it. I just think you got to be very careful, and you need to have a good attorney that can kind of see through some of that stuff, a good accounting firm that can help you get through that.
And tie all the loops up, because
Yes, yeah,
that's,
and and a
yeah.
lot of times, I wrote this down. I don't know how detailed we wanted to get. Is so like for me, example, the reason the company that bought me wanted to buy me was really because of the region I was in and some of the contracts that I had. It just kind of made sense for them to align themselves with that.
Yeah.
So what'll happen a
You
lot
made
of
it
times?
easy.
Yeah, so they want to meet with you, and then they kind of get a 30,000 high level view of your company, like looking. You just send them basic
Hmm.
information, and then they'll make a letter of intent that they want, and that's when you start getting in the trenches, and then they do a very deep dive. I mean, they look at every single thing, and like I said, we were very
Sure.
fortunate. We were very organized and prepared, and we were able to provide that. And then that's when it gets into the negotiations, and that can be a little stressful at times. And it was a very hard decision for me, because at the end of the day, and it was my baby. I built it from scratch. But it was a point, and I can tell you now, looking back, and and maybe this will inspire business owners, maybe it won't. But I'm a better husband, I'm a better father, I'm a better grandfather now than I was before, because I don't have all this stress on me, and I didn't realize how much stress I was carrying in my life. And I want to do
Right.
something else. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but I don't want that level of stress anymore. And the company grew way bigger than I ever dreamed it would grow. Like I said, in the early stages, it was just trying to make more money, and then God blessed me, and it took off.
Mm-hmm.
That leads me right into my next question. God blessed you. Tell me how your faith has played a role, not only in the business, but in your family, and
Yeah.
how
So
the how.
I
Yeah, go ahead.
it's I wish I could sit here and tell you, and this is the great thing about it being a Christian, to have a God that sent His Son to die on the cross for us. Is I'm not the perfect man. I'm still not the perfect man. I never will be. I've got a lot of skeletons in the closet. I made a lot of mistakes. But God has
Yes,
blessed me. I
sir.
mean, look, from where I came from to where I am today, I never dreamed I would be here. And it's not financially. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just with my family, my friends, my church, I have friends all over the country. I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel all over this world, and there's so many good people out there. But I can tell you that I told you a little bit earlier about meeting an individual on a mission trip. Was I went to church younger growing up, some, not a lot, but I did go, and I did give I gave myself to Jesus when I was young, but also didn't always follow that path. And went on a golf trip with some guys, and you can imagine that golf trip was unfortunately a lot of drinking and different things. And I came home, and my kids were younger, and they wanted to go see a movie, and I went and seen the movie with them. It was a Christian movie, Courageous. Hit me like a brick wall.
Hmm.
30 days later, I'm in Cambodia. My life, I haven't looked back since. My life's better.
Your son Bryce, did he have any impact in that decision?
He did. So it was funny.
Yeah.
Bryce, he started. A guy came from our church, and like a youth pastor, and then he
Mhm.
wanted to wanted to go to church. So I call myself, I was a creaster. I could go at Christmas and Easter. And he kind of
Right.
started getting us to go, and
Yeah.
then we just finally started going. I mean, now it's funny. I've been serving on the parking team for, gosh, I don't know, 8+ years now. And at this time of year, it's kind of tough, but it's something I enjoy doing, and it's a part of our life now. And it's like I said, I wish I could sit here and say I'm the perfect Christian. I'm not. That's what I want to tell people is, there's a lot of good people out there. We all make mistakes, and it's just about living your best life and giving it all to the Lord.
Yes, giving it all to the Lord, and when when life happens, remembering that, to just hand it back to Him because He's given us everything to begin with.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
look, God's blessed me. I mean, sometimes I still think there's more for me to do out there, but whose life can I
Oh, no
impact?
doubt.
Whose story can I tell?
Yeah.
Who can I tell my story to that maybe it'll inspire them? It's hard now that I'm older, and these young boys I try to talk to, they just they, as I was at that age, they don't want to hear it. But you just hope you connect with just one.
Well, my friend, you've definitely been a positive influence to me in the time that I've known you, and I appreciate you greatly. I definitely appreciate you coming on here and doing this, um, and sharing your story. It's a fascinating one. I hope our listeners enjoy it as much as I did. And Joe, I'll let you wrap things up if you would.
Yes. Okay. So discussing our faith is hands down the most important part of the show, my opinion anyway. I hope
Mine
everyone
too.
agrees.
Yeah.
But now it's time for the most entertaining part of the show. This is where our guest has to make us laugh. Alan, we can't wrap the episode until you do. So what do you got?
All right, what do you call a bear with no teeth?
Bear with no teeth. I give up.
A gummy bear.
How did I not get that? That's good. That's really good.
That's all I got.
Well done.
Well, yeah, that's a good joke. That's not a dad joke. That's a good joke. Yeah.
Alan, thank you so much for joining us on Power Moves. Your business success is impressive, but your heart is truly special. Thank you for sharing your story and sharing so much of your life with us. Thank you also to our audience. We hope that we provided you with at least one power move that you can make to grow your business. Until next time, God bless.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us on the Power Moves for Business Growth podcast, presented by Gulfside Business Solutions. If you enjoyed today's conversation, follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts and share it with someone making their next big move. Learn more about how GBS helps businesses grow at gulfsidebusinesssolutions.com. Until next time, keep making the power moves that fuel your growth.